Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Software Testing with Ree. Today I'm going to show you how you can easily work with dates in Oracle SQL. When you store something like hire date or a birth date in your database, Oracle actually saves both date and time. But often we need to do a bit more with those dates, like add a few months, find out what day of the week it falls on, calculate how many days are between those two dates, or format the date so it looks nice in a report. That's where these date functions are really helpful. They save time and make working with dates super easy. Alright, let's jump in and see how they work. Alright, so now let's take a look at some of the most common date functions you'll be using in Oracle SQL. These are super handy whether you are doing database testing or working on real world projects. We'll cover things like SYSDATE, current date, how to add months, calculate the difference between two dates, and even find the next Friday or the last day of the month, all with just simple exam functions. So here's a quick list of key ones, and then I'll show you examples for each. Let's go. Now let's start with SysTimesTemp. This is a built-in Oracle function that gives you the current date and time, but with even more precision than SysDate. It includes the fractional seconds or also the time zone, which is super useful if you are working with time-sensitive data or across different time zones. Here's a quick example. If I run this, select SysTimesTemp from Dual, you'll get something like this. So you can see it's very detailed. Next, let's look at SYSDATE. This is another built-in function in Oracle that returns the current date and time based on it's based on the clock of the database server itself, not your session's time zone. So if your database is running on a different server, sysdate will reflect that server's time. It returns the value as date type, meaning it gives you the date plus time accurate to the second. Alright, here's a quick example of how you might use sysdate in a query. Let's say we have a employees table with employee ID, employee name and hire date. Now, if we run this query, select employee ID, employee name, hire date, sysdate as current system date from employees. What this does is for each employee row, it shows us the hire date and also adds a column with the current system date pulled using sysdate. Here's what the output looks like. For John, we see his current original hire date and then the current system date. For Bob, same thing. And since we ran the query today, the current system date is the same across both rows. This is really useful if you want to compare dates, calculate employee tenure, or just display the current date alongside your data. Now, let's talk about current date. It's similar to sysdate. It also returns the current date and time, but there's an important difference. Current date gives you the date and time based on the time zones of the user's session, not the database server's clock. So, if different users are connected from different time zones, they might actually see different values for current date even if they run the same query at same time. Just like sysdate, it returns a date type with date and time up to seconds. It is really useful when you want your queries to reflect the user's local time zone instead of the server time. Now, here's an example using current date in a query. Again, we are using the same employees table with employee ID, employee name, and hire date. This time we ran select employee ID, employee name, hire date, current date as session current date from employees. What this does is it adds a column that shows the current date and time, but based on the session's time zone. Now here's the output. You can see John's hire date as usual, but the session current date shows today's date and the current time from my session's time zone. And for Bob, same thing. The session current date reflects the current time again based on my session. Now, if someone is in a different time zone, runs this exact same query, their session current date will show the date and time in their time zone. So that's the key difference compared to SYSDATE. Alright, next up, let's look at add months. This is a really handy date function when you need to add or subtract months to a date. It's super simple. You just pass in a date and tell it how many months you want to add. Here's a quick example of using add months in a query. We are again working with our employees table. Now I'm running this query. Select employee ID, employee name, hire date, add months, bracket, hire date, comma 6 as after 6 months from employees. What this does is for each employee, it shows their original hire date and then calculates the date that's 6 months later using add months. Looking at the output for John, his hire date was May 10, 2020, and after adding 6 months, we get November 10, 2020. So you can see it's a really easy way to calculate future dates based on any date you have. Alright, now let's talk about months between. This function calculates how many months are there between two dates and it returns the results as a decimal number. Here's how it works. If the first date is later than the second date, you'll get a positive number. If the first date is earlier, then the result will be a negative. Also, if the day part of the two dates is exactly the same, the result will be a whole number. But if the days are different, you'll get a decimal because it calculates the partial month difference. It's super useful when you want to calculate things like tenure, age in months, time between orders, or any kind of time gap in months. Now, here's a really useful example of months between in action. Let's say we want to find out how many months each employee has worked from their hire date up to today. So here's the query. Select employee ID, employee name, hire date, months between, SYSDATE, hire date as months worked from employees. What this does is for each employee, it calculates the number of months between SYSDATE, which is today, and their hire date. Looking at the output from John, hired on May 10, 2020, the result is about 61.77 months worked. So you can see the function gives us a decimal number of months, which is great for things like calculating tenure or for reports where you need month based differences. Alright, next up, let's look at next day. This function is really handy when you want to find out the date of the next occurrence of a specific day of the week starting from the given date. The syntax is simple. Next date, day, bracket, date value, comma day, where you just pass the starting date and the next name of the day like Friday, Monday, and any day you want. Here's a simple example of using next day. Let's say we want to find out the date of the next Monday after each employee's hire date. Here's the query. Select employee ID, employee name, hire date, next day, hire day, date, Monday as next Monday from employees. So what this does is for each employee, it looks at their hire date and then tells us when the next Monday falls after that date. Looking at the output for John, his hire date was May 10, 2020 and the next Monday was May 11, 2020. So you can see next day makes it really easy to figure out scheduling dates based on weekdays. Now let's look at last day. This one is super straightforward and really useful. Last day returns the last day of the month for any given date. The syntax is simple. You just pass the date, last day, bracket, date value. Here's an example of how you can use last day in a query. Let's say you want to find out the last day of the month for each employee's hire date. So here's the query. Select employee ID, employee name, hire date, last day, bracket hire date as month end from employees. And here's what the output looks like for John. His hire date was May 10, 2020, and the last day of that month was May 31st, 2020. So you can see last day quickly gives you the month end date for any date you pass in. Super helpful for reporting or anything that works on monthly cycle. Thank you so much for watching this video on common Oracle date functions. I hope you found it helpful and easy to follow. If you enjoyed this, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to my channel, which is Software Testing with Ree, for simple and practical tutorials on SQL and software testing. And tell me in comments what topic you would like me to cover next. I would love to hear your ideas. Stay tuned and I'll see you in the next video.